Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 148. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing? Did you like the Penguins' first-round pick? They had a first-round selection, which is in itself pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know much about this kid, Owen Pickering. Just trying to do a quick little research on him and all. Looks like he needs to put some. Looks like he needs to mix in a steak or two. I think he's a big kid, but I think he goes like 100, not even 180 pounds, and he's like, I don't know, what is he like 6'5", 6'6", something like that. I don't know the specifics. I don't know. First time I obviously heard of him, but yeah, weird to see the Penguins have a first round pick. So going to be interesting to see if this one obviously pans out for him. I think Josh is pretty excited. I think Josh follows it obviously a lot closer than we do, and I think he had Pickering as one of the ones that he was hoping that the Penguins would draft in that slot. So there's your Penguins Depot portion. And I don't think Movie Depot went over too terrible. I tell you what, what are you were you trolling us in this house or something? Because my wife watched that movie and she didn't have anything good to say about other than the acting. I thought the acting was
that's an important part of the movie.
Sure.
I think, in acting.
Sure,
right?
but yeah, the acting's fine, but not if you can't figure out what the hell's going on. But she enjoyed the acting, but just the whole premise of the movie. I think he tried to play. What is it about it that you liked? Was it the acting that you liked the most? I mean, for someone that doesn't watch a lot of movies, why is that one that's kind of just stuck out on you?
Yeah, well, I don't want to turn this into Movie Depot because I imagine the feedback's not going to be great. I just like movies that have solid writing and it's like blocking and tackling. It's solid writing and solid acting, and if you have those two things, I think you have a good movie.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll leave it at that. I'll stop bitching about it.
It's a tough crowd in the Bryan household, but that's fine. You said it was weird for the Penguins to have a first-round pick, and it was. It's going to be very weird to see Baker Mayfield in a different uniform, and that's what's going to happen week one. He's now going to be wearing a Carolina Panthers uniform, playing the Browns week one as the Browns and we're recording this Thursday night, full disclosure, so if some sort of news dump happens Friday morning, I apologize. That's on me. I have something going on Friday. But yesterday, this would be Wednesday, Baker Mayfield officially traded to the Carolina Panthers for a conditional pick and a split of the salary, and Baker took a small pay cut as well. And so after all the speculation on that front, on the Mayfield front, he's now a Carolina Panther.
Yeah, I think the growing speculation throughout this thing that Baker Mayfield had played his last down in Cleveland there, and that it was just probably a matter of time before he ended up elsewhere. And I think the Panthers kind of just let this thing kind of play on out. Obviously, they didn't want to get to a point where they had to worry about just telling Baker Mayfield to stay home, at the start of training camp and all like that. And I'm sure it sounds like he helped facilitate this thing to get out of town too. Took somewhere around a $3.5 million salary cut. And then obviously on part of it, the Browns paid the larger portion of the remaining salary. And then the Panthers obviously giving up the rest. It's a 5th round pick that I think can turn into a 4th round pick if Baker plays, I don't know, something like 70% of the snaps or something like that. So obviously kind of leveraged there on the part of the Panthers. Now, the other thing to this too, Sam Darnold, still a member of the Panthers. Going to be interesting to see how that plays out if he stays there. This is the same Sam Darnold that's scheduled to earn a fully guaranteed more than $18 million in 2022. That's a lot of money to be a backup,
Mm-hmm. And not a good one either.
Right. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously, this is the Panthers team that also drafted Matt Corral in the third round, but you would think it's going to take a little bit of grooming overall with him. And nice little kind of storyline shooting off this thing almost immediately, and that's the fact that the Panthers and the Browns open up against each other in Week 1. So that automatically moves that game as to one of those kind of must see, maybe not must see, but quite intriguing game there in Week 1. If indeed, Baker ends up starting that, and who's going to be we still don't know for sure who's going to be the Browns, quarterback in that game, because we're waiting to find out what's going to happen out with Deshaun Watson, and is Jacoby Brissett indeed going to be the guy? Might the Browns? There are a lot of, at least, I don't know. I don't want to call it speculation. I would say loose analysis that the Browns should consider trading for Jimmy Garoppolo at this point. So we'll see if anything, comes out of something like that. But overall, I mean, my takeaway on this is, if you want to talk about a winner of this deal, I mean, I think from a flat standpoint of what was given up and what was gotten, I think the Panthers obviously won this trade, but I think the real winner here might be Baker Mayfield, because this gives Baker a chance to get all that Cleveland stuff off of him and see, I don't know how, I don't like to, I've said quite a few times, I don't think Tigers, lose their spots or change their stripes or whatnot. But, with him, he's got a chance to go to Carolina, get a fresh start there, kind of prove that he can, shed all the stuff about him and maybe at least lead this team to a winning record, and then go back into free agency next offseason and see if he can parlay that, into a big deal there. So, once again, I think the Panthers won this from a trade aspect here, but I really think that Baker Mayfield might be the big winner here. And now what he does with the opportunity, we'll see.
I agree. Let me give you some quick numbers, and then I'll give you some quick analysis. According to Mike Garafolo, Browns will pay $10.5 million of Baker's salary. The Panthers will pay about $5 million of that, and Mayfield took, as you said, roughly a $3.5 million pay cut. The Panthers could not go into this season with Sam Darnold as their starting quarterback. Matt Rule's already this close to being fired, and if you went into a season with Darnold as your 1 and Corral as your 2, Matt Rule's going to be fired by about Halloween, and that still may be the case. But right. Baker Mayfield's going to give you at least a chance, and he is the best quarterback. And they may frame this thing as a competition; they probably will. But Mayfield's going to be the starter Week 1. There's no doubt in my mind about that. From the Browns aspect, I think they made the best of a bad situation. We both knew, and Browns fans knew it too, Baker was never going to play another snap for the Cleveland Browns, no matter what happened with Deshaun Watson. So keeping him was not reality. You had to move him. That bridge was burned, and it was just incinerated. And so getting him out of there, putting the focus on Watson, I think by this time next week we'll know what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson, or at least the initial ruling on that. Just creating more clarity and a little less of the drama, I think, is going to be important for the Browns. But, it'll be Baker versus Brissett Week 1, which will be a game that won't be really worth watching, but we'll talk about it endlessly leading up to the game. I can promise you that. Right. Now, the Browns, they found a way to step in it real nice and good this offseason, haven't they? You basically have $55 million tied up in 2 quarterbacks who might not. We know one of them's not going to take any snaps for you in Baker Mayfield, and there's a decent chance, I think, that the other $45 million that they gave to Deshaun Watson, as part of that restructure, look, his base salary is only a little bit over $1 million. That's because they restructured the deal, but they gave him a $45 million signing bonus. So if he gets suspended for the full season, you're paying $55 million for 2 quarterbacks that aren't going to take a snap
for you
Wow.
this year. And then obviously what you add on whatever they're paying Jacoby Brissett, which obviously isn't much there. But once again, they did a good job of stepping in it as only Cleveland seems to be able to do sometimes.
So Baker Mayfield's final pass in a Cleveland Browns uniform was an interception against Pittsburgh, picked off by Trey Norwood, initially kind of deflected by Minka Fitzpatrick, which is some, for Steeler fans, poetic justice, I would assume.
Yeah, there's you some trivia for Trivia Pursuit for years from now.
Yeah, name that Browns quarterback. That's a long game. You'll be playing that one for a while, I think.
Call it what you will, and obviously, the Browns were done with him, but he won some games in Cleveland, and it makes you kind of wonder maybe what kind of season they would have had he been 100% healthy, all of last season. You could tell at the end, at that press conference there at the end of the, after the Steelers game late last season, that something was up there, that this thing what was headed in the wrong direction. And now Mayfield's got that cocky attitude. I don't think he's done it. I don't think he did himself any favors in Cleveland there. But man, go back. You remember how high touted that 2018 quarterback class was kind of touted ahead of that thing. And what was there, like 13 quarterbacks, I think, in total drafted in that 2018 class. And I think only three remain with the original teams at this point. And those three being Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and here's another portion of your trivia question. Mason Rudolph with the Steelers there. Now, obviously, that could change, before week 1 of the season here. But both Darnold and two of your first rounders, and Darnold and Baker Mayfield, already away from their original teams from the 2018 draft there. Look, I liked Darnold coming out. I think he was my top quarterback, but in the same breath, I think there's some tweets even on the Twitter machine that I really kind of thought he would have been better staying in school that extra year. Now, how much that would have helped him overall? Yeah, probably not too terribly much. Now, I think he is who he is, and he's at his ceiling now. But it just goes to show you with these quarterback classes, right, that, you just don't know what you're going to get until they get into the NFL for a couple of years.
Flip a coin. That's basically the success rate of first-round quarterbacks. Because who else was in that class? Josh Rosen, Darnold, of course. I forget some of the other names. Lamar obviously was in that. Josh Allen was Josh Rosen in that class?
Yeah, Rosen. I remember seeing Rosen in there. Yeah.
Okay. They kind of all blend together for me, but for Pittsburgh's standpoint, to kind of bring it back to the Steelers, they will see Baker Mayfield again December 18th when Pittsburgh goes to Carolina. So I can't wait for TJ Watt to sack Baker Mayfield in a different uniform. That'll be fun. But the Steelers, the Browns. Well, I guess the Browns play the Panthers. They do week 1, obviously. Both teams, I guess, have not seen the last of Baker Mayfield, put it that way.
Right. And, obviously the Steelers play the Browns early in the season and then don't play them again until later in the season. So if you're a Steelers fan, you just hope and pray that last, the second meeting between the Browns means something to the Steelers at that point there. Now, and really, I guess you could say, for all practical matters, the same thing against the Panthers game, right? Because that's week 15, in the season when they play the Panthers there. So we'll just, you hope that's a meaningful game on the Steelers side of the ledger when you get to that. Here's the quarterback, some of the top the top quarterbacks taken in that 2018 draft. Baker Mayfield, obviously, at first overall. Sam Darnold, 3rd overall. Josh Allen, 7th overall. Josh Rosen, 10th overall. And then, of course, Lamar Jackson closing out the 32nd pick in the first round that year. Mason Rudolph was the next quarterback off the board at 76th overall in the 3rd round. And in the 4th round, Kyle Lauletta was the
of the Ballers, right?
Is that Kyle Lauletta briefly. And after that it went Mike White, Luke Falk, Tanner Lee, and Danny Etling and Alex Magoo of your champion Birmingham team. There, he's the one that came off the bench in that game for Birmingham. He's obviously now in the USFL. And then Logan Woodside was the last quarterback taken, I think, in that draft in the 7th round by the Bengals, and I think he's already washed out.
Right, yeah. With quarterbacks, I mean, you never know. We project and we analyze it 10 different ways, but there are so many variables involved. It's really hard to predict. But I think what some of these names show is that good scheme, good structure, stability. You look at the quarterbacks who have succeeded, Josh Allen in Buffalo, Lamar in Baltimore, offenses that tailor their skill set to their quarterbacks, stable organizations, teams that draft well overall typically tend to draft quarterbacks better than teams who don't draft well overall, a la the Cleveland Browns. So hopefully that bodes a bit better for Kenny Pickett, just being from an organization or going to an organization that identifies talent well, generally speaking.
Yeah, and I think, having some patience and all as well, too.
Yep.
Obviously Kenny Pickett was considered, and we'll see what that means, later on down the line here. Pickett was obviously considered the most NFL ready of the quarterbacks in this draft class. And it certainly does seem like we're headed toward a Steelers, 2022 regular season that at least is going to start with, possibly even Kenny Pickett on number 3 on the depth chart. I mean, long and short of it, it doesn't, unless something happens, it doesn't sound like Kenny Pickett's going to play early in the season. And, I am a fan of possibly waiting as long as possible with a young quarterback if you can. But obviously in today's NFL, on top of it, though, there's all this rush, especially if you got a 1st or 2nd round draft pick invested in a quarterback to get him on the field as soon as possible. But I think that, the Steelers obviously, they show patience in head coaches and yada, yada. And you go back to 2004 and Ben Roethlisberger, what the original plan was with him. Now, obviously he was an underclassman and everything that goes along with that. But, try to have a little patience with him because, as we see, you just really don't know about this, quarterbacks in particular until you get them on the field.
Absolutely. To go back to Cleveland to kind of round things out, again, I don't know this to be a fact, but my suspicion is that by this time next Friday, we'll know what's going to happen. Again, the initial ruling from Sue Robinson on Deshaun Watson, because the briefs are due, I believe, this upcoming week, and the Friday news stump sounds like a good time for the NFL to tell that information. I was talking to a Browns buddy a little bit ago, and obviously no one knows what's going to happen. Here's my thought, though. I think it's fair to assume there's going to be some suspension recommended for Deshaun Watson. Is that fair to say?
I mean, I would be shocked if there's not, and obviously there's some of this more stuff coming out today about one of the accusers and all like that about the son. And I haven't, dove way too deep into that and all, because it seems like something comes out on this every 2 days or whatnot, and you drive yourself crazy trying to keep up with the back end of it, I think. But I mean, my thought on this for a while, at least for the last several weeks, has been that he could potentially be gone for the whole year. But who knows at this point? But I think it is safe. I would say that it's at least safe to think that he's going to miss the first 6 games. I would think, but obviously I don't know that for sure.
And I say that to say this: as long as there is some sort of punishment recommended from Sue Robinson, Roger Goodell has the authority to turn that into whatever he wants. Now, both sides can appeal, and I imagine one side, whoever feels like they quote unquote lost the recommendation, will appeal. But ultimately, Roger Goodell has the ability, let's say it's 6 games. He could say, well, it's going to be a year. The NFL wants a year or indefinite suspension. He can make it a year, and he just has the unilateral ability to do that. What is stopping him from actually doing that? I'm not sure what the answer to that is.
I think it'd be a lot of pushback from the NFLPA and all like that.
Yeah, but if it's 6 games or if it's considered a week light suspension, there's going to be a PR public pushback as well.
Sure.
And he cares about that more than he cares about the union's always mad at him. That just,
sure.
You sign up for that. So I think that's going to compel him potentially.
Well, I think Joel Corey's kind of laid it out the best. You know, I don't know how much did he. I listened to his podcast, and obviously we had him on the show. I don't know how much he addressed it on our podcast, or if he did at all. But I thought he laid it out really, really good on his podcast a couple of weeks ago during going over what the cap ramifications of a Deshaun Watson suspension would be. And my take on it is that or at least his take on it, me interpreting what Joel Corey had to say, was that it'd be kind of rare to see the commissioner go above and beyond whatever Sue Robinson has to say.
Fair, but I would consider this whole situation to be rare and something that the league's never quite had to deal with to this degree. I mean, obviously there had been cases, Ben being one of them, but a different time and not the number of cases and the media attention and this super long drawn out process. So I don't know. I mean, maybe he would keep it the same, but I say all that to say that Goodell at least has the ability, has the authority to make this any length of suspension he wants, provided there is some sort of punishment. And I think that's important to keep in mind. We try to, because we're all guessing, and ultimately it's two people that decide here, essentially, Sue Robinson and Roger Goodell. And we have no idea we know what Goodell's thinking, but we have no idea what Sue Robinson is thinking right now.
Right.
So anyway, again, I think we'll get our answer 1 week from today.
All right, we better move on from Browns Depot and Movie Depot, or else the natives will get restless.
Let's talk about some more Steelers news here. On Thursday, the Pro Football Hall of Fame released, I think it was 59 total semifinalists for the 2023 Hall of Fame. This is from the senior committee. This was a mix of players and contributors, which are largely coaches or GMs or key figures to the NFL and its history, and two Steelers made the list on the contributor side of things: former head coach Buddy Parker and Steelers' current vice president Art Rooney Jr. Not Art Rooney, the second team president. I get my Rooneys mixed up, and I appreciate you and Matthew for setting me straight. And so Rooney was the team's personnel director during the 70s dynasty, and then is currently the team's vice president. Parker, coach of the Steelers throughout the 50s and 60s, and was really the first coach to lead this team to some level of sustained success.
And how many will come out of this list?
I believe it's going to get whittled down, I think, of 12 on each side later this month, and ultimately up to 3 senior members can be picked for the 2023 class.
All right. I mean, it's great that Parker's back, is on there, and Rooney Jr. is on there. I mean, you look at the list and all like that. It just feels like it's not going to be the year for either one of them,
Right. Parker's an interesting guy because he has the reputation of somebody who hated rookies. This team back in the 50s and 60s would have years where they wouldn't pick in the draft until the 7th or 8th round, right, because he would just trade all the picks for veteran guys. But he traded for Bobby Lane. That was one of the veterans he got because he coached him in Detroit. And Lane was, and I had a terrible take on this yesterday on Wednesday, that Lane is the third best quarterback in Steelers history. And he was the first one that, again, kind of brought this team to some level of sustained success. And so Parker certainly did that well. And then Rooney Jr. with Chuck Noll and Bill Nunn, et cetera, helped build that dynasty. Really replacing Parker, Rooney stepped in and kind of changed the philosophy from ignoring the draft to building through the draft. And that's where you got Joe Green and Terry Bradshaw, the 74 class, the all-timer, etc. One name not included on this list, much to our chagrin, I'm sure, is L.C. Greenwood, not included as a part of the semifinalists for the player side of things. I don't know how he's not even included on that initial pretty wide list of 29 or so semifinalists.
I think that's the most disappointing part of all of this from a Steelers perspective, is that he's not on it. You went all through all those years where obviously Donnie Shell, looked like that was a lost cause, and let's face it, if not for the Centennial class, right, we might still be waiting for Donnie Shell to get in, right? Sure, absolutely. What's it going to take to get a guy like L.C. Greenwood in, who I think is deserving? Is it going to take to get to the 150 year class, along those lines there? I mean, I don't know what it's going to take at this time. It just seems to be, he seems to be that forgotten guy now.
Right. If you're not even included on this list of the semifinalists, then I don't know how you'll ever get in. And the Hall, to their credit, is trying to expand and increase the number of senior committee players and get people kind of from a forgotten era into the Hall, which I really appreciate. But I don't know how Greenwood's not on this list. I know Joe Green had the shoulder injury later in his career, but LC Greenwood played fewer games than Joe Green and has more sacks than Joe Green. And I'm not trying to say Greenwood was better than Joe Green, but I don't know how he's been forgotten in that steel curtain defense.
Right, exactly. And it is very disappointing at this point, and it does kind of make you wonder, man, if he's not on the list now, as time goes on, how is he ever going? How is he going to ever get back to being a semifinalist again or whatnot?
Right. So
at that point, so disappointing. I mean, I don't know what how else to frame it. I don't know what the other than trying to push it more through Twitter and the social media platforms and all like that. I mean, obviously there's been numerous articles written about it over the years, and unless you start and look, I would like to see them open it up a little bit more about how many could get in, every year. But on the backside too, I don't want this to turn into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right.
Where everybody and their brother seems to get in, that kind of thing there. But I don't know what it's going to take at this point. He does seem to be kind of that forgotten piece. And man, if you have Donnie Shell in at this point, I think when I was of the age and understanding of Pro Football Hall of Fame anyway, I probably would have told you that LC Greenwood would have got in before Donnie Shell, growing up, as far as that goes there. But obviously that didn't happen. Now, look, Donnie Shell did play, and as we talked during the process years ago through this thing, that Donnie Shell was able to stand on his own after the dynasty, after the 70s.
Sure.
And I think that was a big part of it too. He just wasn't just. Yeah, he had some nice stats and obviously played, part of that, those 70s teams and all like that. But I mean, he really did stand on his own, once you got into the 80s.
Right. And obviously there is the theory of the Steelers fatigue, of too many Steelers being in the Hall. And that may be one reason why a guy like Greenwood isn't getting the love that we both believe, and I think most Steelers fans would agree he deserves to get. Some names who are on this list who are not Steelers, but notable names: Don Coryell, Robert Kraft, Mike Shanahan from a player standpoint, Ken Anderson, Jim Marshall, and one of my personal favorites, Cecil Isbell, to me, one of the first great quarterbacks in NFL history. He was the quarterback of that 1942 season in Green Bay when Don Hudson obliterated essentially every record then, and was his best year of his career. And so I think about some of the early day quarterbacks, Benny Friedman in the 20s and Cecil Isbell in the 40s are kind of the names that come to mind. I doubt Isbell actually gets in, but I can't pass up the opportunity to mention Cecil Isbell. It does not come up too often on the podcast.
Yeah, there you go. And we both agree that this probably isn't a year for Art Rooney Jr. or Buddy Parker, right?
Correct. And we'll know the next list when they whittle things down July 27th. So the first day the team holds training camp practice. So you let me know about that because I will not be around to hear that. I hope Rooney Jr. can get in. I hope both get in, obviously. But anytime someone's still alive, Rooney Jr. is still living. Parker died in 82. So anytime you get a player, I think about a Jack Butler who was inducted just about a year before he passed away. Mm-hmm. And so when those guys are living, you really want to try to get them in. But I think you're right. I would be surprised if either made it the whole way.
Look, I mean, we could be really staring at the fact that that Ben Roethlisberger might be the next Steelers player to go, or next Steelers, anything, not organization wide, not just player, but he could be the next representation of the Steelers, or to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And obviously, we're several years away from that.
Right. Frankly, I don't know who else would even be on that list. I mean, I understand some of the names, Marquise Pouncey. AB is a whole another can of worms and that whole thing, but
everybody will throw out Hines Ward yearly and all like that. But I mean, we've had that conversation too many times, and no sense, making people mad again on that. But I mean, just it doesn't feel like Hines Ward's going to be getting in anytime soon.
Right? Yeah, I don't see that happening. But that's the update there. Nice to see Rooney Jr. and Parker at least recognized to some degree, and we'll let you know what happens July 27th. Dave, switching gears here, topic that was posted. I don't know, did you write this or Matthew wrote this about Najee Harris, and could he get 400 touches this year? I want to say Matthew wrote that article on Thursday, but what's your take there?
Yeah, and the reason my terrible take was along the same lines, kind of new statistical standpoint. And where do you think, first and foremost, that Najee Harris, who, let me pull up my notes here on this real quick. Obviously, last year during the regular season, 381 total touches during the regular season last year, and obviously part of a 17-game regular season. Is there anything that would lead you to believe that he won't come, at least, let's say, 15 touches within that in 2022?
Assuming health, of course, he should be in the ballpark of the number he put up last year.
Okay, so what would you be more, and of course, assuming healthy, yada, yada, if you would take the over, the under on 381, what would it be?
It's obviously hard to say. It's going to be similar. Maybe the over, because in theory, this run game will be better. In theory, they will rely on it more. In theory, they won't have as many horrible first quarters and first halves where they had to throw, almost exclusively in the second half. But man, 381 is a large number to top.
All right.
So if you made me choose, I would say over, but ballpark's the best answer I could give you.
Right. Yeah. In other words, you would easily say 10 on either side of that, right? So anywhere from 371 to 391, would you be comfortable?
Yeah. And then there's the question of, can he hit the big 4-0, which only 10 touches away from the high end of that. You have 1 or 2 games where you have a real heavy stretch where he's touching the ball a lot. I mean, obviously that's within the realm of possibility.
Right, exactly. Here's kind of what I touched on that kind of surprised me for the terrible take on Thursday. Let's assume he once again averages, and that worked out to 22.4 touches per game. Wow. And let's assume he again stays healthy and averages 22.4 touches per game in 2022. Now, if he's played 17 games already, and that's the first time, first season that's happened. For years, it's been 16-game regular seasons. So let's parse that out. 22.4 touches per game over the first 15 games of the season. So that takes us through the Panthers game. That would put him at 336 touches through his first 32 regular season games of his career, which obviously translating that back to pre-2021, that'd be 2 full regular seasons, right?
Right.
All right. So at that, if he was to hit that 336 touch mark through 15, through the 15 games of 2022, he would have 717 or more total touches in his first 32 career games. What kind of rare air would that be? And by rare air, what I'm meaning by this is I'm looking at players, running back specifically, obviously, because they get, they're the ones with the touches. Players in their first 32 NFL games, okay, that have come in their first 2 NFL seasons. So I'm not talking about the running back or running backs, and there's several that played their 32nd NFL game in their 3rd season. See what I'm saying? Because so some obviously, have missed time in their first 2 seasons, didn't play the full 2 seasons. So what sort of rare air would Najee Harris be in if he were to have 717 or more total touches by week 15 of 2022? And man, I wasn't sure what I was going to find here, but believe it or not, only 5 other running backs have managed to log 717 total touches or more in their first 32 career NFL games in just their first 2 NFL seasons. Now, this is kind of cherry picked and with good reason, right? Because you want to find out how many of these running backs have been able to stay healthy for their for 2 complete seasons, and then still log that, more than 700 touches in there.
Mm-hmm.
The list of running backs is 5. Okay. Did you listen to the take today or no?
I honestly have not. So this is a lot of set of the weird that I'm loving right now. You asking me to guess at some of these names?
I want you to name me the 5 running backs and this had to be within their first 2 NFL seasons, first 32 games, that touched the football 717 times or more.
I feel like this is tattooed on your body somewhere. I get that kind of vibe.
But I didn't know what I was going to find.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, I have no idea. I'm going to just random stabs in the dark here. Eddie George, is he one of them?
That's one of them. He's actually on the bottom of the list. He's number 5 in touches with hold on here. 700. He has the least of these 5 in 32 games. So it's 722, which would even put him ahead of 717 total touches for Najee Harris. Should he hit exactly those numbers that I laid out.
Pittsburgh, at least Bill Cowher alleged they would have drafted Eddie George had they not traded for Jerome Bettis. So whatever that's worth, which is probably nothing. Priest Holmes, is he one?
No, he's not.
Okay. This one, I don't think, but Earl Campbell?
No, nope.
LaDainian Tomlinson?
That is one.
All right. Well, the receptions probably helped him out quite a bit, I'm guessing.
He is number 2 on this list. Okay. And I'm going to cheat you here. I'm going to give you, you have 2 strikes. I'm going to give you I'm let you.
I can pitch for the Pirates, right?
I'll let you phone a friend here. All right. LaDainian Tomlinson was the last one of these 5 to accomplish the feat.
Right. So a little time frame for him.
Back in 2002. It's been 20 years ago. 2002. So, Tomlinson, George, Tomlinson was the last player to do it back in 2002. There's 3 other running backs, at least according to Stathead on this list.
Yeah, we'll trust Stathead. I'm starting to blank on who any of the others may be. Jim Brown?
Nope.
Yeah, it's probably not enough games probably to do that.
And remember, you have to play 30, within 32 games. Well, I mean, not necessarily, but they had to do it within the first two years in the NFL.
Okay. I got you.
So obviously Jim Brown he would have really had to been a workhorse in the amount of games that they played in the first 2 years, right?
Fair. Yeah, I'm kind of spiraling right now trying to think of some names.
You're in the 6. I'll give you another hint. You're basically in the 16 game per season, era.
Right, which is 78. I think they started 16 games. 78 to Tomlinson, which was like 01 or something.
Right. 02 with Tomlinson was his second season. I'll let you have one more guess, and you got to hit it, or else I'll give you the answer.
All right, that's fine. I'm just trying to think of a good poll. This will be an obvious one that probably isn't accurate, but Walter Payton.
Nope.
All right. Give me the rest. I got 2. I felt like I did okay.
Edgerrin James.
All right, that's a good one. Marshall Faulk, was he one?
No.
Okay. All right.
Eric Dickerson.
I think that's who I was trying to think of when I said Earl Campbell, but that makes sense because in his rookie year he had like a crazy number of touches for his first season.
Right, and the last one, Curtis Martin.
Ooh, all right, I like that.
All right, so the list is, and this is in order of touches, most to least. Edgerrin James, LaDainian Tomlinson, Eric Dickerson, Curtis Martin, and Eddie George. So those are your 5 running backs that more than 717 total touches basically in their first 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean that's good company to be in, but it's also very rare company to be in. And
that's why I said rare air, right? And 4 of those 5 are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Eddie George is the one that's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame now.
More like rare ground, not rare air. That's why
so now obviously, and we are cutting it at after 15 games because we want to make this a 32 games. So, I mean, that would be quite an accomplishment just from a touch. And we haven't even touched yards or anything like that. And we're just looking at this just from a workload standpoint. for and for obviously for Najee to hit that once again, he'd have to have 336 touches through week 15 of the 2022 season. So, I mean, it really would speak to durability first and foremost, if he's able to hit that number. So I don't know why I went down that rabbit hole. I just did. There's just been a lot of talk about what, and it kind of stems from Matthew Marksy writing that post the other day, buy or sell of Najee Harris hitting 400 total snaps. So, I mean, if he stays healthy, it's plausible. It's very plausible, right?
And it's interesting because those names you mentioned, they didn't burn out. They didn't have the workload early and they flamed out. Like those guys went on, as you said, for the 5 Hall of Famers. So it's interesting that obviously running backs can be worn down, but it feels like some guys just can get to a point where they just don't wear down, or at least for not for a long, long time. And so there's a wall that you can kind of break through. And if Harris could get to that point, it actually would be an encouraging sign, although the workload would be historic for this modern era.
Right. And obviously it just takes one snap to get injured and change the whole course of things. But I mean, it would be a good sign overall. As I mentioned, it'd be rare air for him to get to that point there. And look, and as we've said several times, this offense, is going to lean heavily on him, and they need him to have an even better season than he had in 2021 if this offense is going to come close to holding up their end of the bargain in this thing.
Sure. And bottom line is Harris is certainly capable, and the Steelers are willing to get Harris in that camp because he is the guy. This is the first time since, 04, 05, this team is going to be a run-centric offense. Since then, it was always through Ben, by Ben, through Ben's arm, with Ben's arm. And so it's a different dynamic to talk about the run game being the lead this year and the pass game being the follower.
And look, if he hits 300, let's say he hits exactly 381 total touches in a 17-game season again, he damn sure better have a lot more than 1,667 yards.
Yeah, I found the one stat that I pulled the other day. Harris is the first runner with 300 carries in a sub 4.0 yards per carry number since 2010, when 3 players did it. I believe they were Steven Jackson, I want to say Cedric Benson, and Richard Mendenhall, of all people. So having that number of carries usually, and it's rare to get to that number in general, I get that, but usually when guys have 300 carries, it's because they're really efficient. The run game's really strong. Not the case last year. So the overall efficiency must be better for Harris and for this run game.
Right. And look, in today's NFL, especially with a guy, a guy that's had kind of the workload and age entering the NFL. And I wrote about this, I think, prior to the draft on Najee Harris. And I know I've written about it in the past, other classes as well, too. It's usually doesn't work out well when you get your running back to 400 touches in a season,
Mm-hmm. But I guess it worked out well for some of these names.
Right.
But for these names.
But these it did. So,
right. So, interesting stat. Good research. I mean, July is the time for that kind of quirky stat. So I appreciate you putting all that legwork in.
All right. I thought it was interesting, and I didn't think I'd stump you like that.
You stumped me. Hey, you got me.
I got you. I mean, you got one. You got George, right?
I got 2. I got Tomlinson and George.
Okay.
So I did okay.
Yeah, you did all right.
That made me think
is that too many qualifiers in there? You understand why I did it the way I did it, right?
Yeah, no, because
32 games.
Because you're focusing on workload. So if someone did it in the 3rd or 4th year because of injuries, that workload is being spread out, and that's not an accurate depiction of what you're trying to show here.
Right, because you got the extra off. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, obviously, that went into the 3rd season with him, Right,
because he got hurt. He's played 12 games his rookie season, all that. So, no, I understand why. It's a very specific stat, but I don't think it's so obscure the way that you've seen some that, in baseball, this guy's hitting 400 on a 2-1 count in a waning crescent moon against left-handed pitchers, something that it's nothing to do with, just there's no correlation there.
Right, against the Pirates position player, right?
Exactly, against Josh Van Meter specifically of the position players. So, yeah, I think there's a correlation and a rationale behind your kind of qualifiers and you're narrowing it down, not just random stuff to make the stats look kind of cool.
And how else are you going to fill 20 minutes on a July 8th podcast, right?
I've been struggling so much lately trying to find some stuff to write about. I do, and I'm going to keep this a secret, so I apologize. I usually don't want to keep secrets, but I'm working on a passion project of mine. Should be ready sometime next week, and I'm very excited to do it because I've had a lot of fun putting it together.
Opposing players' batting averages against Pirates position players. Is that what it is? Or
you've been stealing my work, haven't you, Dave? No, you've been looking at my paper. No, it's a football related one. It's a video, and I'm gonna have a lot of fun with it.
All right, good.
All right, Dave, let's transition to your 90 and 30 series, marching right along. We're on the L's today, right, with Justin Lane, DeMarvin Leal, and John LeGlue. Starting with Justin Lane, never became much of a corner, never going to be much of a corner, at least not in Pittsburgh, but has carved out the role well enough as a serviceable to above average gunner, and so that'll have to be his role again to try to make this roster more competition, battling potentially James Pierre. But Lane has become quietly a solid special teams player.
Yeah, but I don't think that was the goal of Kevin Coleman when he visited Michigan State pre-draft a couple of years ago, right? Man, if only we could get Justin Lane to be a quality gunner on special teams several seasons from now. But that's what he is at this point, and that, to me, is special teams play is the only thing that's got him kind of tethered to the NFL right now, right? And it's the only reason he's probably going to make, or he should make it to camp. And one would think that unless that slips for him, it's going to be enough for him to stick on the 53-man roster this year, right? I guess the thing that you want for now that you're probably unlikely to get is, man, it'd be nice to watch this guy kill it during camp and the preseason, wouldn't it? As a corner.
It would, but even if he did, I may begin to look at that as that just a veteran playing well against some rookies that don't know what's going on. And I mean, obviously, you would like him to see him play well as opposed to not doing that. But I think any idea of him being an NFL corner on Sundays has gone out the window for me.
He is the modern day Curtis Brown, right?
Yeah, a little of that hair on fire. Isn't that what Tomlin said about him? Probably about the same level, dude. Yeah,
I don't know. Curtis Brown might have had a little bit. That hair might have been a little bit more on fire,
I think so. Yeah, but
he was a good special teams player. Curtis Brown was.
Then he went towards ACL. That was kind of all she wrote, I think, on him. Lane is inside looking out on the roster, but if some hotshot corner comes up that can play, defense, I could see that guy get bumped off the roster because when you're a special teamer, unless you're a really firmly established guy, you're always right on that bubble. And if somebody gets hot and plays their side of the ball well and contributes on special teams, kind of like a Jameer Jones last year, you could knock one of those guys off. And so he's inside looking out, but he is not a lock to make this team.
Right. He's not uncuttable by any stretch of the imagination, but he would have to get beat out.
Right. Agreed. As of today, he's on the roster, but that is a 65-35 kind of deal with Justin Lane.
And if he does make it, this is it for him, right?
Yeah, he'll be a free agent after this year. With Lane, I don't mean to gloat here, but I called it whenever he came out.
Oh, yeah, you weren't a fan of it.
His hips weren't fluid, and he was an average speedster guy. When you run a 4.5 and you don't have fluidity in your hips, and your former receiver, I didn't like that combination. And it's even hard to pinpoint exactly why he struggled. Because he hasn't played a ton, but I just don't think he has really any special athletic tools to really man up on the outside in today's NFL.
I mean, it just felt like he was overdrafted. Period. I mean, if you got him in the 5th or 6th round. Then if he's hanging on as a special teamer at this point, is it as big a deal as investing a third in him?
No, you're happy. You're like, that's Anthony Chickolo. I mean, that's a late round pick that did well on special teams, and you're good with that. I mean, I think again, Lane didn't.
Dang, you got me thinking. What draft was that? What year is that? That was
14, somewhere around there.
No, Lane. What year is Lane?
Oh, Lane. 17, 18.
This is his 4th year, right?
Yeah, this is last year of his rookie.
So it'd been 18, right? Or no?
Was that the Mason Rudolph? Was it? Someone can Google this. We have the technology.
Yeah,
sure, someone's already done this.
What was it?
19. Actually, it was 2019. 19, okay. 20, 21. Okay, I felt 18 didn't sound right, and I was off on 17. So
I want to go over real quick the players that were kind of drafted in between him and What did the Steelers do? The Steelers have a pick in? Yeah, Benny Snell was in the 4th round that year. So here are the players in between: Kalen Saunders, Jalen Ferguson, R.I.P. Kahale Waring, the tight end, who just he just surfaced somewhere on or got cut or something, I think. Okay. The Houston tight end. Damian Harris, running back, Cody Barton, Bobby Okereke, Connor McGovern, Trey Pipkins, Chuma Edoga, Miles Boykin, who is now a Steeler, Jamil Dean, man, some of these names, those Shawnee Examines from the Giants, Dawson Knox, tight end, Bobby Evans, the tackle, Quincy Williams, the safety, Mike Edwards, the safety, Will Greer, a quarterback, Yadni Kajust, a tackle, Alexander Madison, a running back. That closes out the 3rd round. Hakeem Butler, Ryan Finley, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That might have been
I think the next name was the guy everyone missed on.
Yeah, Max Crosby. Oh, yep. Can you imagine? Let's see, Anthony Nelson, Julian Love, Kari Willis. Anyway, people are getting the doesn't look like he
Willis retired.
Amani Hooker's down in there before Benny Snell. So yeah, a couple of guys the Steelers could have had in, other than Justin Lane in that 3rd round for sure.
Mike Edwards would look good in the Steelers uniform. He's playing really well for Tampa Bay right now. Obviously Dawson Knox, but yeah, I mean, obviously he played that game all day, but Lane was not the correct selection.
All right, I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole, but it just hit me real quick to want to look at the names in between there.
That will be the title of your memoir, right? I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole in Stories by Dave Bryan.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. Actually, it'll probably say, "Watch this,"
and the pages are empty. You fill in your own story. DeMarvin Leal, 3rd round pick out of Florida State, brought in to provide some defensive line depth. A guy that played more on the edge, has added weight since being drafted by Pittsburgh to kind of be more of a traditional Steelers defensive lineman, closer in that 300-pound range. Honestly, Dave, he was probably my least favorite draft pick, and I'm very happy to be wrong about him. I just don't know the fit of where he best fits in this system. I always am leery of adding weight to these athletic guys who are supposed to get after the quarterback. He had 15 pounds. I don't know what's going to happen with him with his body type, movement skills, etc. And the run defense really shaky with him coming out of school. And to me, Pittsburgh's run defense, number one thing they're looking to solve this year is to improve that run defense. But, it's year 1, rookie, and I want to go in with an open mind on DeMarvin Leal.
And look, I think the biggest thing here is you just hope you don't get into the situation, at least in the first 2/3 of the season, where you have to play him a bunch in some meaningful downs, right? And I mean, you look at the depth chart right now, and as I always like to say these things have a funny way of working themselves out after what they went through with injuries. I hope that funny way of working themselves out kind of skips the defensive line this year. And if it does, I mean, we could be looking at DeMarvin Leal on the inactive list for a good while, barring somebody getting dinged up and having to miss a game here. So I think the best case scenario when it comes to a guy like DeMarvin Leal is that you can bring him along a little bit slower. I mean, look, at the same time, last year we were talking about Isaiah Loudermilk and probably saying about the same thing. Man, it'd be nice to not have to play him a lot of meaningful snaps. And lo and behold, he had to play some meaningful snaps. A lot sooner too, because Tyson Alualu week 2 went down, and
Carlos Davis week 1. Everyone forgets about Carlos Davis getting hurt. And Tua obviously not playing at all. Yeah, I mean, Loudermilk played a lot more than this team anticipated.
So look, we'll obviously evaluate it if it happens, but I don't know how we're going to color this more than what we did post draft of a guy like DeMarvin Leal. I just think that my hope is that we're not having to talk about him early in the season, and then maybe if he gets some playing time later in the season. I mean, realistically, if everybody stays healthy, this kid might not even see 100 defensive snaps.
Yeah, that's one of the sneaky upsides of the Larry Ogunjobi signing, was that a guy like Leal, there's less pressure. It's not, this guy might be one injury away from seeing significant playing time. So when I think Leal, if and when he plays, it'll be more in that sub-package role. Pittsburgh rarely has true pass rushers to come in on third down, but maybe you see him kind of in that role a bit more because I really worry about that run defense, but I don't see him playing in base much of it all, assuming good health of that group. If he does play, it'll be in that nickel dime third down kind of role.
Right, and expectations should be low if he has to play much as a rookie.
Yeah, and again, I just wonder, does he have the anchor to stop the run, and not only this year, but just in the future as well? I think run defense is a big concern with Leal, and that just kind of worries me going forward.
All right, next.
Next is going to be John LeGlue, who made a couple starts at left guard last year. Whenever they were I think the fifth string left guard turned out to be John LeGlue. So he is, let me get on my soapbox here for a second, if you'll allow me, Dave, of why I don't call anybody a camp body, because I'm sure if I went through Twitter, somebody last summer, this time a year ago, was calling John LeGlue a camp body. No one would ever hear from him again, and lo and behold, becomes your starting left guard. But really kind of a good representation of why versatility creates value and keeps you around. LeGlue played everything but left tackle during training camp, even did some long snap work in the middle of training camp, gets on the practice squad, gets called up due to injuries, goes from practice squad to an active, the backup, the starter. His actual play was, I would call it below average, but a really high effort dude and a guy you have to root for.
All right, at a risk of making my going back in time here, I pulled up my LeGlue from my 2021 90 and 30 series.
Oh, okay. I like it. Hit me. Did you call him a camp body?
I said outlook. LeGlue is a versatile offensive lineman, and the Steelers have him listed as a tackle. Versatility aside, however, LeGlue will have an extremely hard time making the Steelers 53-man roster out of training camp and the preseason, and especially if the team only keeps 9 offensive linemen in total. LeGlue's best shot at staying in Pittsburgh following the final few rounds of roster cuts includes him landing on the Steelers practice squad to start the 2021 regular season. In the meantime, however, LeGlue will certainly be fun to scout during the team's preseason games, and especially if they allow him to play both tackle and guard, which could quite possibly happen.
I mean, that's a good summation of what essentially occurred. He did make the 53 coming out. He was versatile. He played guard and tackle and ended up playing some center as well, and worked his way up. So I don't think you said anything out of school in that last year's write-up.
All right. And as far as this year's write-up goes on him, I have, where did it go? I'm going to have to find what I did with that.
I can pull it up here.
Okay.
Give me just 2 seconds, but it's a different scope. It's now, this guy might be inside looking out. But
I got it here. I said the Steelers added 2 free agent offensive linemen during the offseason, then James Daniels and Mason Cole. Additionally, guard Kevin Dotson should be back healthy as well. The Steelers will have several backup offensive linemen battling for 53-man roster spots this summer, and LeGlue will be one of them. He has position flexibility, so that will help his roster making chances. Should LeGlue ultimately make the Steelers 53-man roster, he might find himself on the weekly inactive list quite frequently. It's also plausible that LeGlue starts 2022 on the Steelers practice squad.
Yeah, I would say if this team keeps 9 offensive linemen, I have LeGlue penciled in as number 9. Not that that's in pen. A guy like Chris Owens may have a similar profile as a versatile guy, and I talked to him last week, and he's excited about where he's at right now. But I would say overall he's number 9 if there's a 9, and if not, then he should be on the team's practice squad.
Right. I don't think you want to get in a situation where you have to play him. The amount of snaps that he played last year, but I mean he does have position flexibility. Doesn't he have a little bit of? Didn't he do something at center, or at least? Could do the Trey Essex version of it,
That's a good pull forward. Yeah, he did some center last summer.
Right. So there is that. I wouldn't hold my breath about him making the 53, but look, he's got NFL snaps underneath his belt. That position flexibility, we all know what the Steelers think about that. So that will help him. Obviously, new offensive line coach. We'll have to see the dynamics of that and all. But a guy that I think at worst could start 2022 on the practice squad.
And I know no one cares about the feel goods because it's about winning football games and all that good stuff. But LeGlue, you could just tell how much last year meant to him
sure.
on the field, hustling, like always the first dude downfield to help out, the runner or fall on a loose ball. I have some clips on Twitter of him just busting his butt downfield and kind of a Pete Rose run the first after you get walked kind of thing.
Charlie Hustle.
Charlie Hustle. Yeah, there you go. So I just appreciate those little things I remember whenever he was doing the center snaps in camp, his first day of practice, the dude looked so nervous before practice, trying to work on stuff on the side, looking down at his feet, at his steps and stuff like that. So a dude that's living the dream. He probably won't be a 10-year vet, but who knows? But he's going to enjoy the time that he has, and I can respect that.
All right. Isaiah Loudermilk.
Another Steelers defensive lineman. We've talked about him, a fair amount. Yeah. Obviously playing more than expected last year. And the downside is he had to play more last year. The upside is he played more last year, and he's in a better place this year. And so that's going to be the silver lining to it. He's probably gotten stronger. Again, I just worry about, and I said this from day one, the second they traded up to draft him, what's the ceiling on this guy? Can you get much as a pass rusher? I think I just see his outlook as a rotational base end, which is not the worst thing in the world, but I don't see this guy becoming a long-term fixture in terms of seeing serious snaps for the Steelers.
Yeah, maybe an LT Walton.
Ooh, I like it. You're getting some good pulls on me today.
With maybe a little bit better run defense and LT Walton.
Like a Travis Kershke, Nick Eason kind of guy.
Yeah. I will say this about him. I didn't think he was going to play as much as he did last year. B, I was impressed with several of his run defense snaps. So I thought he made progress in that aspect of it. The good, like you said, there's good and bad. The bad is that he had to play. The good is that he had to play because he got some experience there. Seems to be a great dude. I think he's all bought in on what it takes to be a Steeler and all like that. I think he probably learned a lot. So we'll just sit and wait and kind of get your reports from training camp and see what happens during the preseason and see if he can continue to be a grow as a run defender and make some strides whatsoever as a pass rusher.
Yeah, he's got to just be more of a power rusher, collapse the pocket guy. He was trying cross chops and finesse moves last year. He's never going to win that way. But he got his hands up in throwing lanes. He was really good. I think he had 3 batted passes because he's got size. He's 6'7" and with good length. Actually, his length isn't that great, but he's a big guy overall. So he's able to kind of disrupt things that way. He runs to the football extremely hard. I do think his run defense certainly shined in moments last year with being more consistent, having better what's the word I'm looking for? Leverage and those kinds of things. Because he is a tall guy and kind of has to fight that sometimes. But I just don't see the upside being too terribly high. And I'll be honest, the mini Cam Hayward talk drove me up a wall last year. I kind of get it, maybe from like how they look and maybe how they act, but not how they play overall.
Right. Yeah, he better develop that long arm in a hurry if he's going to be anywhere close to Cam. Here's the thing: you ought to play a little bit faster. In other words, playing and not thinking. Being in that defense. I don't know how much obviously that's going to help him, but he's got to develop more as a pass rusher if he's going to stick around.
Was it you that tweeted out the clip of Cam Hayward working with Chuck Smith today, with him kind of going through some of the bag drills or whatever?
Chuck Smith tweeted it out. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe you retweeted it or something, because I think I saw it on my timeline. I had to laugh at that a little bit. Like I know Hayward was doing all these like swipes and finesse moves. He's just gonna do the bull rush the whole time this year. Like he's working all this stuff just to long arm people come week 1. So I just had to laugh at that a little bit.
Man, that long arm of his is nasty. Yeah. It is nasty.
Ain't broke, don't fix it, man. Right. And that thing's the best in the game. So the finesse moves are fun, but I know week 1 on that first third down, that dude's going to go power rush and forget about all the stuff he's working on right now.
All right, Arthur Millette.
Kind of a interesting, very poor man's Mike Hilton rundown slot corner last year, was playing in really – the guy played only on a handful of third downs last year. It really was kind of a true first and second down corner, if there was such a thing. Good tackler, really aggressive guy, blitzing, didn't have the Hilton feel and timing overall, but certainly a good dude, and plays to run really hard.
And can give you a little something on special teams, I think, right?
Yeah, he's got that Curtis Brown hair on fire, Napoleon complex, which I can appreciate.
Right. I mean, is it unthinkable that he doesn't make? Could he be unseated from the roster spot? It's unlikely, I know, but
I don't know how to peg his roster chances. I feel like we kind of forget about him, his existence, with Norwood and Casey and stuff. I don't know what this guy's chances are.
Most of when he look, if he sees the field, it's going to be obviously in slot in some sort of sub package, right?
Yeah, it's going to be what it was last year. First and second down nickel packages, essentially. It was his role last year. And
I think as you kind of pointed to, how does Norwood and Casey kind of fit into this, and Sutton maybe kicking inside a little bit more. Yeah. How does that all play into it? And, does it wind up costing Millett some playing time, because he logged 380 defensive snaps last season?
Well, this team had such a hard time finding the slot corner. Remember all the slot corners they tried, and they settled on kind of Millett and Norwood. I mean, I think it could not only squeeze him out of playing time, it could squeeze him out of a job. I mean, if Norwood, to me, is the better player, the much better cover corner, and if Sutton's going to play inside and Casey can play inside, and they're all better cover corners overall than Millett, then what is Millett's role and value to the team overall? Right.
Now, they did re-sign him to a 2-year deal, but it doesn't make him uncuttable. It's just, you'd kind of think they have a little bit more confidence in him, on a 2-year deal. But I mean, look, if he's not the one for the roster spot, his salary is not going to prevent them from cutting him. So it is one of those kind of players where you're kind of wondering, well, what exactly do you do here?
Right. I think it might be 2 dogs, 1 bone between Millett and Casey, because they feel kind of redundant to have both. That's my. If you map this out quickly, is 10 DBs a fair number to assume they'll keep week 1? 10 defensive backs.
I mean, at most, obviously.
Okay. I mean, that seems like a good number to put on it.
And more than likely for just 4 safeties, right?
Right. So if you map out, let's say the safeties, Minka, Edmonds, I'm gonna call Norwood a safety for our purposes here, and Killebrew. So there's 4.
All right.
In terms of guys you feel like pretty safe to make the roster. And then at corner, you're going to have Witherspoon, Wallace, Sutton.
You consider Norwood kind of a DB, right?
I put him in the safeties, but you can put him in either bucket. But he's played slot corner and free safety. So yeah, Witherspoon, Wallace, Sutton, one of Lane, Pierre at least. That gets you to 8 total, with 2 spots for the other of Lane, Pierre, Millett, and Casey. One of those guys is not going to make the team.
Okay, that's fair.
I think that's kind of the way that I'm looking at this thing right now.
That's fair.
And I think that's where I kind of get Millett versus Casey as like that slot feisty corner to make the team.
He's not going to see a second year. He really would have to have a phenomenal 2022, in my opinion, to see the second year of that 2-year deal.
Yeah, his skill set is so. It's like I'm trying to think of I wish my music knowledge or my movie knowledge or my general knowledge was better to kind of think of some sort of obscure, because his role is so niche as the rundown slot corner. Like that's all he really is, and that has value. But it's like trying to be Weird Al and trying to find songs he can parody. It's such a niche thing. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but all I'm trying to say is Millett has a role and a talent, but it is a very niche thing to have.
I'm impressed that you know who Weird Al is.
I know. You should be. I don't think many kids do, but were you a Weird Al guy?
He was obviously popular through the MTV generation days and all like that, with the Eat It and, all the parody. Look, I mean, you couldn't help but kind of enjoy a lot of his parodies,
Yeah. All right. Anthony McFarland Jr., talk about guys trying to make this roster. I mean, this is make or break for McFarland. Year number 3 for him. The first 2 have gone very poor. There's an opportunity. There's not a lot of running back depth, and there's some competition there, but the job's open. Can he finally jump on it is the question.
It'd be one thing if say kind of a Matt Canada wasn't with the team when he was drafted, but Matt Canada was with the team when he was drafted, right? So he obviously knows about him with the time that he spent in Maryland, and you kind of thought that you would see some of the stuff that you saw at Maryland during his more productive year there. I think it was his freshman year, right? When Canada was there, you kind of thought you would see some of that stuff. Now, obviously, the knee injury last year putting behind, moving train and just never really caught up for that. But I mean, here we are now. He just saw action in just 2 regular season games last year on his way to log in, 19 offensive snaps and 8 special team snaps. He's not a guy, unless he gets a kick returner job, he's not a guy that's going to give you anything on special teams. He recorded 3 carries for 3 yards, 2021, caught 1 pass for another 11 yards, returned 3 kickoffs for 73 yards. We don't even know who he is at the NFL level, really, at this point. And he better show the Steelers, this year during training. He cannot miss any time whatsoever during training camp, period, or the preseason. He's got to be some guy. He's got to be a guy that shows up all the time. And, is he going to make it? And I think and this is how I ended it here. In closing, McFarland needs to have a great summer if he's going to stick around past the team's final preseason game, because you got guys like Mateo Durant, you got the Jalen Warren kid, you obviously have Benny Snell. Who else might they add?
Right. Cut down. He's battling the waiver wire.
Right. I mean, and once again, it's not like this is, at least Benny Snell can hang his hat on the special teams play and say, look, I can help you out here. If McFarland does not make this team as a true running back, it's hard to make a case for him here. And it's disappointing because, once again, you got another mid-round pick tied up in a running back that just isn't going anywhere here. And he is in grave danger of bouncing himself right out. I mean, I think if he did get cut by the Steelers, he might land somewhere on somebody's practice squad, maybe even the Steelers. But he is very close to being out of an NFL career.
The spot in Pittsburgh for McFarland is wide open, but it will have to be earned, not given. They're not going to just hand it to him. A lot of running backs are going to get cut here. Running backs always get cut. Teams seem to have always one too many of them, and there will be options on the waiver wire. So if he has a good camp, he can make it, but he'll have to earn it, not just be handed the opportunity. I will say, in camp last year, and because Matt Canada is going to get to run more of, quote unquote, his offense this year, he was used a lot in pony sets, in jet sweep plays. He caught 15 passes in camp last year. That was more than I think any other Steelers running back. He carried the ball quite a bit and had a decent camp overall. So I do wonder if the intent last year was for Pittsburgh to use McFarland a bit more under Canada. Then, of course, he has the MCL injury, misses the first half of the year, gets back, and the season's already halfway through. Harris is the guy, and they're not going to start incorporating plays for Anthony McFarland to try to get some action. So I do think Canada running his offense, because he will get to do that this year, may be a silver lining of hope for McFarland.
And look, what's this guy's claim to fame right now? A big game against Ohio State.
Yeah, 4 years ago. Yeah, it doesn't mean much anymore.
Now, granted, there was a lot of different things. There was some wheel route stuff against Maryland versus who was not Boston College.
I couldn't tell you.
Begin with a B. I forget the school, but anyway, some nice wheel route stuff and. That kind of interesting ways that they used him, throwing to him, out of some motions in the backfield when Canada was there. Bowling Green. That's what I was thinking about. That I think that Maryland. I think it was a Maryland versus Bowling Green game. I knew it was.
When did that happen?
Huh?
When did that game happen? When did that get on the schedule? Bowling Green, Maryland.
Didn't it?
I mean, I believe you. I just tried to think about how that got scheduled. What was his?
I'm pretty sure I'm right. What year was his freshman season at Maryland?
I've proven I'm not good at years right now.
2020, right? No, 19.
Well, that sounds about right. I mean, I believe you. I'm just trying to think, how in the world did Bowling Green get scheduled against Maryland? Like, was that game played at Wednesday at 1 a.m.? Like, I just don't know who was tuning in for that contest.
Let me see if I got that right. Maybe it was no. Here it is. September 8th, 2018. Maryland versus Bowling Green. McFarland, 8 carries. Man, there's some things I couldn't tell you what I ate yesterday.
But Bowling Green, Maryland.
I am a classic idiot savant. Well, idiot, but McFarland. I remember watching that game clear as day. During the process, 8 for 69 on the ground, 2 for 53 through the air. One of those, I guarantee you that one of them was a sort of a wheel route.
I think you've proven yourself well. No, I believed you. I was just trying to think, how did that game ever get scheduled in the first place? Who called who? Who was Bowling Green like, we want to play Maryland this year. That is our game to play.
And then, obviously there, the other things in kind of looking at his college tape and the way Canada specifically used him, motion and all like that. Look, here's the long and short of it. That guy from Maryland's freshman season better show up at training camp this year.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the literal last chance, maybe for his NFL career, right, as you said. Right. So, all right, what do we? I know we're done with the grouping, but what do we have next as our preview? We're getting halfway through probably these things.
Oh yeah, we're super close to that. In fact, I'm almost done with the 90 overall. Let's see who is next here. Anthony Miller, Henry Mondeau, Dan Moore Jr., TD Moultrie, Cameron Niziak, the punter, and Trey Norwood. So we ought to be able to fly through several of those guys when we get to the the Tuesday show next week.
Yeah, I have no idea how to pronounce that punter's last name either. Nizelik? I have no idea. Yeah. We'll work on it. We'll workshop it.
We might not have to learn it too much.
Hopefully we're not saying it yet because somebody, and I shouldn't go down this rabbit hole, but it made me mad. Somebody called Presley, this is another Steelers competing site, we'll call it, called Presley Harvin a steal. I don't know what definition Presley Harvin was ever a steal, but that's what's going on out there in other places.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway. All right, Dave, anything else you want to talk about in today's show, or do you want to get to reader emails and close out today's show?
Yeah, let's close it out with some emails here. Zach Myers writes in, hey, guys, I have kind of a random question to try to keep the offseason moving. Has Big Ben officially filed his retirement papers yet? Is there any chance he's looking to come back to another team? Thanks, guys, and best wishes to you, Dave. Thank you for that, Zach. I don't know about the papers, but he did, I think let's see. His contract didn't I say that he went on the reserve retired list?
Did you? I don't recall that. You may have, but I do not remember.
I can look real quick here to see. I got to log into the back end of the NFL.
I mean, if he's on that list, that means he's filed paperwork?
It doesn't necessarily mean that he's filed the paperwork. No. Okay. But let me see.
Would we know if he filed paperwork then, if he's already on the reserve retired list?
That might be a question for Joel for Joel Corey, I think.
Okay. That's a good question. Yeah, because wasn't there that whole discussion, and I mean to ask you questions while you're looking something up, but the whole question about if he waited until after June 1st, the way that the dead money could get spread around, there was a conversation about that way back when.
Right, but because he would have had to have agreed to first push back the date of his contract expiring first. That would have been part of it to begin with there.
Okay, my bad. I was just trying to think back and ramble a little bit while you looked up the status of Ben.
I'm not seeing. He's obviously was part. He was on the NFL transactions on 5-3, but that was unrestricted. That was the giant list of unrestricted free agents not asked to re-sign with their team by the cutoff of 5-3. No, I'm not seeing where he's gone on any kind of reserve retired list. No. So I know Stephon Tuitt's on that list, obviously, because he was still under contract. So I'm guessing Ben would not have to be on that list because he was technically an unrestricted free agent.
Okay, that makes sense. So whereas
Tuitt was still under contract, right? So that's the difference there. So I don't think we would glean. I mean, there's nothing there to decipher as far as Ben on reserve retired list. The only question would be, has he filed the paperwork? And I don't know.
Okay. Real quick before next email, just have to, and this is peak off-season content, and I tweeted that today. I don't know why Mike Flory is even hinting at Jimmy Garoppolo to Pittsburgh. That's not happening. You may see that more coming up here, but that's not even.
I don't get. I mean, did they miss Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett and that part of the offseason here? I mean, look, and there were 9 teams on that list that Florio had. Nobody would have missed the Pittsburgh Steelers not being on that.
Right.
He could have built a good enough list without. I don't get it. But welcome to July 7th.
Yep. And I don't know. I mean,
and why do we write about it? Because it's so damn silly. Sometimes you can't help but write about stuff.
Well, because you get asked about it. Hey, why did Flory suggest that? That's out of left field. And it was a short blurb, but it just felt so unnecessary. I don't know why he added it in the first place.
All right.
Anyway.
Thomas John Lloyd Kastner. Boy, how's that for a name? Thomas John Lloyd Kastner. A Mayfield contract. Panthers/Browns Depot. He says, now that Baker Mayfield has landed with the Panthers, some folks believe the Panthers quarterback room is rather expensive, allegedly costing them over $25 million. While my understanding of the Steelers' spending on their quarterback room is limited, it seems plausible to me that the Steelers' quarterback room might not be as cheap as people think if Trubisky gets considerable playing time and reaches the playoffs. My question to you is whether or not I'm completely off base there, and I'm curious as to your general thoughts on the comparison between the two quarterback rooms from both from a spending and quality of player perspective. Also, do you think Sam Darnold might be on the trading block, considering some believe Mason Rudolph can net up to a 5th? I imagine the Panthers could recoup some draft capital if they're willing to take on some of Darnold's salary in a trade. If I'm the Panthers, unless I get my doors blown off of a team willing to maybe give me a 5th and take on all of Darnold's salary, I'd keep him around at least till the final round of cuts to make sure Mayfield stays healthy, right? And see how that competition goes. That said, I would not be floored if Sam Darnold started week 1 of the season on another team's roster. And as we mentioned, Thomas, early in the show, he has a little over $18 million. It's fully guaranteed this year. So if they cut him, and I don't know what the offset language is in there with any of that. If any of that would be offset if he signed with another team, because I haven't seen the actual wording of that. But I mean, they're still going to take on a good bit of that deal. So I don't know. From where we sit right now, unless they get the doors blown off, I think Darnold's going to be on that Panthers roster at least up until week 1 or almost to week 1. What can they get for him? Good question, man. You hope Sam Darnold maybe blows it out in preseason, but within that, if he does blow it out in training camp, maybe you're thinking about starting him over Baker. I don't know. It's a mess. As Alex said, this is a last ditch effort for Rule to be able to keep his job here overall. So let's see. He says, look, the quarterback room with the Steelers, it's to look at it from an expense standpoint. I mean, it's not like Mason's costing you all that much. What, $3 million right around in there? I think is his base salary. Kenny Pickett's on a rookie deal. And his first year base salary obviously is $705,000, and obviously got the signing, but it's not like he's going anywhere. And then there's Mitch Trubisky, who is a 2-year, 14 point whatever million, and essentially it's like a 1-year, 6 point whatever $1 million contract with him, unless he hits some of these incentives. And if Mitch Trubisky's hitting incentives, playtime, and what was that on Pro Bowl or whatnot, I think. Yep. If Mitch Trubisky's hitting any of those incentives, man, that's a great damn problem to have. And that includes playtime incentives too, because that means that he's played well enough to keep his job up until later portion of the season there. So I guess I don't understand the question. While I'm understanding, it seems plausible to me that the Steelers quarterback room might not be as cheap. No, it's cheap. Make no mistake about it. It's a cheap room overall. And even if he hits some of these incentives, it's still a cheap room. And that's even assuming Mason Rudolph is still on the roster come week 1, which I'm not convinced he will be.
Right. I know on its face, you look at Trubisky's deal and say that's a lot of money, but for a potential starting quarterback, that's about as cheap comes as, sans guys on rookie contracts. And so, I don't really know if there's a question or a point to really address. I don't talk about comparing the quarterback rooms too much. I think trading Darnold would be a monumental task. You saw the issue Cleveland had trying to unload the Baker contract, how long that took, and Baker's a much better quarterback than Darnold is. So I don't know what it would take to be able to move Darnold to any poor, desperate team. But again, for Pittsburgh, it's financially, it's one of the cheapest quarterback rooms, maybe the cheapest quarterback room in football.
And looking at the end game now, obviously Pickett and Oladokin and the situation that Rudolph's in, and Trubisky being added. Looking at the end game now, is there anything that you would have done different in this?
In terms of constructing the quarterback room,
right.
Would I have done anything different? I would not have drafted Oladokin in the 7th round, and I wasn't a big Trubisky guy, but I get it, and I can live with that.
Right. I guess what I'm getting at is it's easy to understand why they did what they did, and I'm not a big Trubisky guy either. But now you wait to see if it plays out. If Trubisky ends up being the guy that they maybe think that at least he can be for the first half of the season there. But, and look, you got a 7th rounder, Oladokin. I'm sure you could have gone a different way with that, got him undrafted or whatever. But, other than going after a Garoppolo early in the offseason, which I think we agreed that there was no way in hell that was going to happen.
I like that idea less than I like the idea of Trubisky coming to Pittsburgh.
Who else was there quarterback wise that maybe you would have said, okay, let's get this guy for 1 year. Let's even raise it to $10 million. And then let's also draft a quarterback.
Sure. There really wasn't that name. And that's why I don't talk about, we can gripe about Trubisky all we want. I don't care about that anymore. He's a Steeler, and whatever happens, and you take that whenever it comes. I forget the names I talked about a little bit with Brissett, Tyrod Taylor, Teddy Bridgewater. I think I like
Mariota, maybe.
Yeah, there's Mariota. But they're all in the same, veteran bridge quarterback camp, and so it's all kind of one and the same.
And I guess what I'm getting once again, I'm not. I hope Mason. I hope Mitch Trubisky really blows it out and really lives up to. I've seen a lot of optimistic fans out there about Mitch Trubisky, and boy, I sure hope Mitch Trubisky makes a lot of you fans right about this. But even though I'm not big on Trubisky, you understand why they did what they did, and I think it's pretty evident what they're doing with the defense this offseason. And this team's not going to be reliant on a quarterback to get them to a playoff spot.
Sure.
But a quarterback sure can prevent you from getting there. But first and foremost, if this defense does not hold opposing teams under 20 in a lot of games this year, they're not going to win games, period.
Right. No, I agree. Just as a quick sidebar, as a shameless plug, talking about quarterbacks, Jonathan and I have a debate up Friday morning. Should the Steelers explore trade for Mason Rudolph this summer? Jonathan argues why Pittsburgh should. I argue why Pittsburgh should not. So give that debate and each argument of you and let us know your thoughts, which side you come in on.
All right. Now to go up Friday morning, right? You said?
Yes. Yeah. By the people listening to this, it'll already be posted on the site.
All right. One final question here. John Peterson, how can true Steeler fans not know who Merrill Hodge is? Alex and Dave, when Merrill Hodge recently made the news with his interview where he was critical of the linebacker play, there were a lot of Twitter users posting comments like, who is this Merrill Hodge guy anyway, and what does he know? I've never heard of him. For some of us who grew up in the 80s, it's crazy that people who think they are true Steeler fans don't know who Merrill is. He was a bright spot during some dark years, and this is the email. Being drafted in the 10th round, he was a shocking success. Imagine a 7th rounder making such an impact today. It was also the way he ran that was so exciting, through defenders instead of around them. I would love to see an article on Steelers Depot highlighting his career with a few video clips of him running over defenses. Reliving great Steelers history is one of the great aspects of being a true fan. Keep up the great work, John. Southern Utah Steelers fan. So he's over kind of close in my neck of the woods out here, John. John, look, it's that's the sins of us getting old, brother.
I was just going to say, John, that's your reality check. You are an old man. We thank you for it.
That's John and I having, as Mike Tomlin used to say, concussed birth certificates, or contusions of the birth certificate, I think. There. Yeah, it is kind of funny. And, look, I mean, obviously, Alex wasn't alive when – were you alive when Merrill Hodge played?
Around that time. I wasn't taking notes on his play, I don't think. When did he play? I exited late. His last year in Pittsburgh was the year I was born, 93.
Okay, so there you go. Now, obviously, you know who he is from following the team all these years. And look, here's the other thing. Do these people not read or watch Steelers.com? Because he's been doing breakdowns and all like that. Yeah, it's easy to point fingers, I guess, sometimes, at casuals. And I think more casuals surface on Twitter and Facebook than they do on the actual comment sections of say, Steelers Depot and all like that, there. So, yeah, I see where he's coming from, is saying, who is this guy anyway, criticizing? Now, look, did we think Hodge? I don't know. Devin Bush might owe Merrill Hodge some money the way that one went there. And Merrill Hodge calling Robert Spillane the Steelers' best linebacker right now. That was a little rich for my blood as well too. I think from an X's and O's standpoint, I think Merrill Hodge does great work breaking down stuff. And look, he used to even be part of what was the show he was on? Edge
NFL Matchup, right?
NFL Matchup, right? Yep. So I'm really showing my age now. I mean, that was a great show for at the time when it ran there. So, what about a post on Merrill Hodge at some point? I don't know. We're getting 3 weeks away from training camp. I don't know if we're going to hit something like that here in the near future, but we'll try to keep it in mind.
Factor back. That was Merrill Hodge's big go-to word there. He's a very old school guy. Like I think he would love the game to be like 1970s, or in his era, the 90s all over, which I can appreciate. You said I wasn't alive to watch Merrill Hodge. My first words were Merrill Hodge, actually. I didn't say Mom. I didn't say Dad. I said Merrill Hodge. No, I'm just kidding. The thing I remember about him, and the reader talked about his running style. What's forgotten about Merrill Hodge, he talks about it occasionally, are the concussions. This guy had some really bad concussions. I think I remember reading there was a book that he'd written or was part of. His final year in the league with Chicago, I forget the whole story, but he had one of the worst concussions you can have, where it really, really messed him up, and obviously ended his career pretty early. So that run style, while it was fun to watch, came at a cost. We'll see if we can do a post on it. Not a bad idea, but I'm not sure if I'll get around to.
Did we get to this email about Cam Sutton, a solid leader, a player but better leader? What are your thoughts on Sutton as one of the locker room leaders? Did we address that?
Yeah. It sounds familiar, but I don't know if I was asked that.
He said I just listened to Pat McAfee's interview with Kenny Pickett. He said,
I think we did. Yeah, we got that one.
Okay, I thought that because it is from 4 days ago, and we did do it. Yeah, I think we hit on this, so I think we've kind of caught up on at least the most recent emails there. So you got anything? We're at it right at about an hour and a half here. You got anything else to add before we run off into the weekend here?
No, I think we're all good. We'll see what happens on Friday. Again, apologize for this thing being recorded Thursday night, but I'm going to assume there won't be any urgent news that comes out from now until Friday morning.
If there is, we'll talk about it on the Tuesday show. And if it's really earth shattering, we might have to do a Saturday or Sunday show, but hopefully we're not. I don't think we're going to get there. But anyway, more than likely until Tuesday, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. So within all that, everybody, we hope you have a nice weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.